Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. I know what time of year it is. It's dark. People are feeling the pressure of the holidays. Some of you are done this week, myself included. So you're trying not to just do the full checkout from work. There's an excitement, but there's also a pressure that comes with the holiday season. Events you've got to go to, family members you've got to see, drives you've got to make, travel you've got to endure. There's always old stresses when you're visiting with family members, with old friends. It's dark outside, it's cold outside, it's slippery, it's icy. Here, if you're here. I don't want to hear it if you're some fan of the show that's living in South Florida. It's actually so, yeah, save it. People are generally, the threshold for what they can endure at this particular moment is little thin. You, of course, have the cheery people who love Christmas. And so they're just exuberant, unbelievably excited. They're bubbly. They're happy to be around. And it rubs off on some people. And I would say, I'm not a good day to be wearing green. I'm not a Grinch about it. But I wouldn't put myself into that category of just like Christmas. I think about some of those stressful things as well. And I'm excited. I do want to have the rest and recuperation. I'm thrilled to be seeing my family. But people are stretched thin at this point. Maybe you don't have your shopping done. So adding watching the Toronto Maple Leafs to the experience of this time of year, my guess is people are going to overreact just a touch. I think I did yesterday during Leafs Talk. I'm not apologizing for anything I said. I stand 10 toes down on everything that I was saying on that show last night. If you listened to it, if you didn't, it's there, subscribe, review, do those things. But for a fan base that is already teetering, for a fan base that is already doing the thing where they go, all right, we'll get behind you. For people that are still showing up to watch this team play. Last night's comeback, I don't think resonates the way that a comeback normally does. If you're in the building, of course. And kudos to the people that were there. McKee made a great point yesterday on Leafs Talk about how he thought the crowd's booing turned them around and that they were awesome for celebrating in the moment the way that they did, how loud they got when Matthew scored, when Dakota Joshua scored, the way that they celebrated Joe Bowen, all of it, right? I got no slings and arrows for Maple Leafs fans last night, but they showed up, and the boos were understandable because, again, this time of year, but also watching this hockey team. And a comeback like that, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a lot of people out there that are stoked on it and who go, man, that's a huge comeback. Like, what a comeback. What a win. I can't get there. I'm not there. I said a few weeks ago that it was going to take a stretch run, a really significant one, ahead of the Christmas break for me to start to feel like things were different with the Leafs in terms of my opinion being the best course of action this season is to remove a few pieces from the roster, reset, go into the offseason, and decide just how major some of the decisions that need to be made are going to be. And last night, that's a win that doesn't make me feel any different. It's a Chicago Blackhawks team without Bedard, one of the worst teams in hockey last year, a team that they're pointing out in the broadcast does not ever win if they fall down just a solitary goal. That was pretty bereft of talent, right? Like, you're looking at a lot of guys who you got to look up. You got to, who? And hit the old hockey reference or hockey DB page to figure out who they are. And the Leafs come back. They get some bounces that go their way. There's a seeing eye puck from OEL. There's a puck that lands right on Austin Matthews' stick after a fortuitous power play. And then there's just a nice goal by Dakota Joshua, who, by the way, like if I'm going to say that there's a real positive from this recent run, it's Dakota Joshua is putting up stats and starting to be the player that a lot of Leaf fans were expecting him to be when we were shaping hey, he's healthy, he's engaged, he's getting a fresh opportunity. This is sort of what I expected from Dakota Joshua. More to the potential that everybody had talked to me about. But to just ignore the vast majority of that hockey game is impossible at this point. It just is. And after the game, Austin Matthews spoke to the media and he said this, quote, "It's a nice win. I think other than maybe the last 10 minutes of the first period, I thought we played pretty solid. I think it just got away from us after 10 and a couple bad breaks. We stopped taking care of the puck and turnovers were an issue," end quote. I've been hearing the turnovers were an issue thing from this team all season long. Like it's just a clear PR talking point at this juncture. I don't even believe they really believe it. They do that. We got to take care of the puck. I'm sure Berube is preaching it a ton, but it rings hollow to me because that's the only negative assessment that they ever really seem to have about their game is that they're too careless with the puck. I get these emails and I watch the post-game stuff all the time, and it's basically that message almost every single night they don't play well. The Leafs had one shot in the first, I think, 11 minutes of that hockey game. So I'm not really sure where Austin Matthews is getting the assessment that the team played well in the first 10 minutes of the game and that it was just some bad bounces in the second half of the first. It just wasn't good. It hasn't been good. And the thing that I'm really feeling today and that I can't shake, and that's been sitting with me for quite some time, but you try not to do it when it's early on in a hockey season. And as bad as they were playing, you try not to go full doomsday and evaluate it, especially when you do a show like Leafs Talk, which is very much in the moment. You want to do the game, and you don't want to do the big picture all the time. And I think that is exhausting for people, to be honest. You have to be able to celebrate your wins. I talk about it with guys on the show all the time, is that we work in a climate where everything's about the next day. Everything's about the next day. Everything's about what's the next story? What's the next story? What's the next story? And you don't really get a lot of time to sit back and enjoy when you do book a great guest as a producer, you do have a good show as a host, or you enjoyed your day at work because you're constantly focused on the next thing. So again, doing big picture all the time is too much. And I'm probably guilty of doing it too much. But man, there is an apathy with this fan base that is settling in that I really do feel is different than any other time since I've been a Leaf fan. There have been frustrating seasons. I remember everybody hating John Ferguson Jr. to an extreme degree. JFJ thrilled that there was no Twitter when he was around as the general manager of this hockey team. There were moments where the team was a joke. There was that stretch where they kept having these stupid late season comebacks and finishing in 9th place, avoiding top draft picks, but missing out on the playoffs. And guys like J.S. O'Bain and J.S. Giguère, the two J.S.'s, those two guys would get hot for the Leafs and push them just outside of the playoff picture. And you go, what are they supposed to do? How are they going to reset this thing? They had years where they just had basically no talent, and fans were dying for a rebuild. They wanted it to be done properly. They were done with the idea of go out and get stars that you wanted from the past and plunk them down on a roster when they were not even close to the same guys anymore. We all remember the Jason Allison season. We all remember Eric Lindros as a Maple Leaf. Well, we as in millennials and Gen X and boomers. I don't know about the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas. But still, they're not likable. It's just not a likable team. And I'll say this. The Jays were not likable in 2024. And I do recall a lot of tear it down and I don't know about Vladdy. Are you really going to give Vladdy money? And Shapiro and Atkins, they got to go. And look at what they've done and look what they've built. And people had reached a boiling point with the Blue Jays because it had been nearly a decade under Shapiro and Atkins, very similar to the Matthews era. And people were fed up with it. So winning can cure a lot, right? The Jays were unlikable until they weren't, until they started to win and you got to know them a little bit better. Maybe a lot of those players loosened up. Sure, there were new faces and they brought in, I would say, a few more likable guys. But overall, people were at their boiling point with that group as well. And everybody was wanting changes. And the deadline in 2024, when the Jays kind of half sold, there were a lot of people who wanted to see far more drastic action and I honestly, I was kind of in that camp. I didn't think that the Jays were going to bounce back in 2025. I remember, I'm pretty sure I did this. I'm not 100%, but I was in the, like, what could they get for Kevin Gausman? Should they be not trying to move Kevin Gausman at the 2024 deadline, given that he's got the added year and maybe he gives you a better net return? So these things can change, but it has to come with a significant amount of winning and also the players being relatable. And right now, you're not really getting either of those things, and you've got an even longer stretch than the Blue Jays had. Yeah, you've had postseasons. Yeah, again, you could mirror it with the Blue Jays in terms of just, all right, you got to the playoffs, you got bounced. Oh, is the wild card count? Does the first round count? Sure. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but the way that people are feeling right now, you can't play that way against Chicago Blackhawks, have a comeback, and expect the fan base to just go like, man, that's the group. They dig in. Hey, the moment matters, and they showed up when it counts. It's not that feeling. And I'm not going to pretend that it is. So to me, the people are pissed. Again, it's the internet, but my DMs at JD Bunkis, they're mostly full of, what the hell is this? Not great comeback, great win. Can't wait to hear the show tonight. And the question that I'm really thinking about today, and I'll bring in Jason Bukala on this, former director of amateur scouting, and of course, Sportsnet hockey columnist. Matthews scores that goal last night, but it's his first shot of the game. And for the most part, didn't really feel his impact on this one basically whatsoever. And there's this notion that, hey, maybe they just don't have the energy. Hey, maybe they just don't have the effort. But also, maybe they're just not all that good if Matthews is not the old Austin Matthews. Maybe they are trying. Maybe they are engaged. Maybe they are focused on this season. Maybe they're not quitting on the coach or checking out on the coach or however you want to frame it. Maybe just that alone is holding them back from being a really good team. Anyways, Jason Bukala, former NHL director of amateur scouting, and again, Sportsnet hockey columnist. He joins me now. What's up, Books? How we doing, buddy?
Good morning, buddy. How are you today?
I don't know how much. I don't want to do. I don't want to do it like this. I'm trying to be cheery going into the holidays. Yeah, I got full Grinch mode. So yeah, I'm just going to start with that. Do you think this is a good hockey team with an effort issue, or do you think that this is just a bad hockey team or a mediocre hockey team?
Mediocre hockey team amongst several mediocre hockey teams in the National Hockey League right now. Sustainability when the games get really hard. So I'll give you. Let me back up just a little bit here. A couple weeks ago, things were going not very well at all. They run off a 3-game winning streak, and I was around our industry, and people were starting to get perked up again. You know, like, oh, geez, they're turning the corner, this and that, and I got a couple of people in knots because I'm like, this is not how to do business, guys. Like, just trust me. At the beginning of the year or whatever, there's so much going on. Call it injuries, call it Mitch Marner's not on the team, call it goaltenders. There's all kinds of things going on. So you have to do things in segments. And you and I have had these conversations before. That's how I operate, right? So a 10-game segment will tell me something good, bad, or otherwise, and then vice versa. When they turn the corner for a 3-game winning streak, and people are like, "Wow, it's looking like it's trending up," and you know, I'm trying to talk them off the ledge at that time too, saying, "Like, let's let this run its course as well, and see what happens." They're just a mid-range team. That's the reality of it. I'm with you, by the way, and I was listening to you there. The one thing that occurred to me last night was how hard it was, even though I didn't think that they were anywhere close to even great in the back half of the hockey game. The front half of the hockey game speaks for itself. But how hard was it for them to beat the Chicago Blackhawks without their best player in the lineup and Levshinov, a healthy scratch for Lateness, who plays some big minutes he's a young guy, but he plays some big minutes for them on defense there. And that's pretty telling for me. I got to be honest with you. Like, this is not the way it's supposed to be. And they are what they are, and we're just going to have to. People are just going to have to deal with it. I don't see this team as being a team that they miss. I'm shocked on a lot of levels of how laissez-faire they are in so many different categories. The Austin Matthews discussion, I listened to you there. He leads the team in shots on goal by a very wide margin. His winning face-offs, he's in around 60% of that. There's a lot of positives in there, but it still just doesn't look like the energy and the push through. And I honestly think that the team, I've heard this in playoffs for so many years, that they need a reality check in terms of, well, we weren't very good for 10 minutes, but I thought we controlled the play. That's not the way it works, JD. The way it works is we needed to be better for a full 60 minutes. That 10 minutes against the Colorado Avalanche or whoever's the top team in the Eastern Conference come hard games in the back half of the season, they run them into the ground in 10 minutes and they don't have a chance of coming back in the game. So I look at it completely the other way. I'm not trying to be the Grinch. I'm just trying to be realistic here.
No, that's it, man. I'm sorry, but there has to be a different bar for a game against a Blackhawks team that's missing two significant guys in a game where your coach called you out with your leadership structure, said we need more from them, and you start a hockey game after getting filled in by the Edmonton Oilers in the third period where you get outshot, I think it was 11-1, and the other team, again, far lesser than you and on a completely different part of their trajectory, puts up 2-0 on you. So, yeah, you can come back. And I think a lot of people felt that they would. Once they scored that first goal and it was 2-1, I went, oh, they're absolutely going to tie this game. And I actually even texted McKee. I was like, I bet you 34 scores. He's got no shots throughout that hockey game. Their line hadn't really done too much. Nye's had a couple of moments, but that's a $32 million line, Books. $32 million when they put William Nylander, Austin Matthews, and Matthew Nyes together. And to your point about just running a team off the ice, right? And just feeling like, hey, we're a contender, and you're the Chicago Blackhawks. How many moments in that game with the first line did you feel like, oh, my God, they are just like in a completely different world than what the Blackhawks have to offer? And so for me, it's you go, all right, well, maybe they need time to develop chemistry. How long have Matthew Nyes and Matthews been playing together? Like, how many times has Matthews gotten a look with William Nylander? These aren't brand new players in a brand new place trying to figure it out to get, like, they don't get the same standard of that. I need to see you kick their ass in a game like this. And when people go, or you say, hey, I'm not trying to be the Grinch, this is actually one of the most frustrating things about all of it, which is, and I think that a lot of Leaf fans and observers feel the same thing, which is this market has the reputation of just always being negative, right? And even with the Marner stuff, you get, oh, and the Leaf fans and the market ran him out of town, and look at you now. This is what you get for being so negative. Even though with Mitch Marner being here, they won 2 playoff rounds and invested in him year over year over year, gave him a huge contract, gave him, like, you go to a Leafs game, there's still Marner jerseys there. You see kids, most of them still have Marner jerseys. Like, the idea that he wasn't supported is completely out of whack with reality. It is not the truth on the ground. The internet and the stuff that goes to the very top in terms of outrage is never an actual look at what is truly happening and what a team actually did. And so when you have these conversations about the team where you go like, hey, man, this isn't very good, you're met with this underlying feeling of, oh, well, don't be too negative because you're a part of the problem. And it's unbelievably toxic. I cannot stand it. I just want to be real about this team. And it's a lot of what you're saying, which is as of this season, and we are sitting midway through December, they just look mediocre. They do not look like there's anything about them special outside of what I would say is maybe their goaltending.
Yeah, I mean, and that has had its moments as well. For the most part, I would say their goaltending for sure. When Wall is healthy, he's looked. I mean, honestly, last night the disallowed goal and the fact that he didn't allow the third one. If they would have got a third tuck, Chicago last night, that game is over. Like I didn't feel there was any emotion there, so the game is over. Yeah, Hildeby's been really good. Let's be honest, for his trajectory and where he's at in his career, kind of escalation, if you will. He's looked solid. I guess I'll cherry pick different things like that, but on balance, again, here's where I'm just trying to be realistic. That's all I'm trying to be. Justin Bourne ran a fantastic article yesterday on .ca, or maybe it was the day before, I'm losing track of days, but calling the Leafs mid, and that's what they are. The thing of it here is that a lot of the league is like this, but the question I would pose to yourself if I were in a meeting with you is, are we trending closer to where the Chicago Blackhawks are right now, or
Mhm.
are we trending closer upwards to even the Tampa Bay Lightning for the duration of the season, like as we forecast where we're going to go? And then you start to take a look at the underbelly. If this is as good as it's going to get, or as close to as good as it's going to get, how much better are we going to be in the second half of the season when the games get exceptionally hard? And by the way, we don't have a lot of cap space to work with. And by the way, we don't have any draft capital or assets to move out to get any better than what we are. So what I'm trying to tell you is that without 10 or 15% more out of every one of these guys on this roster consistently, especially at the top of the table on any given night, you need that out of them, or else it's just not. It is what it is, and you have to suck that up. But you have to be realistic about it. It is what it is, and it's not good enough. But I guess it's also not completely surprising because everything runs its course, doesn't it, JD? Like
Yeah.
you either get to the next level or you don't. And this is not, like, to your point, 3 or 4 years. And by the way, being too hard on athletes, like from a hockey operations perspective, I can tell you that we are harder on ourselves and harder on the athletes than even the media. So when people start to use that as a crutch, I get my, you know what, in a nod as well, because here's the thing. Imagine you have you're not well. You have some sort of a significant illness, and you're going to the doctor's tomorrow morning, and he's making $2 million a year, but he decides to have an off day. That's not good for you. Like
Mhm.
that's not the way it works. And when you're looking at a $11 million, $13 million athletes, and they can't give you absolutely everything they have in the tank consistently on every day,
Mhm.
you owe that not only to yourself for cashing the paycheck and your teammates, obviously, but to everybody else around you. And to me personally, this is a team, a group that doesn't give everything that the coach expects them to give on any given night. So that win last night is a win. You banked the 2 points.
Sure.
It's fine. That's what it is. But it's not a win in the big picture for me. And there's lots to unpack still going forward here.
Yeah, if you want to play the game of, well, they're only, I think it's 6 points back of first place in the Atlantic, then okay, that's fine. And you've even, I think, got games in hand. I'm pretty sure last I checked, it's Detroit at
Yeah,
the very
you got
top.
a couple of games at hand on Detroit. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you can play that game. You can also play the game of they're only 3 points up on last, which is the Buffalo Sabres, who just fired their general manager. Like, I get it. It's a relevant part of the conversation, the standings watch in December, and we're doing it far more this year because of the way that these teams are knit together. And it's basically the best excuse for the Maple Leafs is you can get hot and there's nobody really there, and so it's kind of there underneath the surface. But it's just, yeah, I can't give that. I don't. I said this last night. I don't like the idea of just you comparing yourself to other middling teams and saying, well, you could be just as good as the Detroit Red Wings. Well, yeah, you're supposed to be better than them. So I don't really care about you using them as a measuring stick. I care about what the feeling is of your product and the way that you handle your own business on a given night.
So what do you look at that? Like for me, when I sit here, when you put it to me like that, are you satisfied because you still have an opportunity to climb, or are you being realistic about what you are? And sometimes along the line,
Mm.
you have to take a look at the big picture and say, you know, yeah, we're that close to that, but we're also just as close to something else. And so you run out the season. They're not going to make. I don't think they're going to have a chance to make a lot of roster moves, if you will, not a big
Mm.
splash like they have in the past at the trade deadline, for example. They don't have the assets to do it. And frankly, I'm sure that Brad Treliving isn't willing to move any of his younger assets that he does have. Like Ben Danford might go off and have a really good World Juniors. You know, tonight I'm
Mhm.
going to go watch him play against Sweden and in Kitchener in the World Junior tune-up game, and he might go off. But honestly, do you want to even move any of these pieces to launch this group into maybe another
No.
level? I don't think that that's worth it. As a matter of fact, to be frank, the East is so jumbled up and unpredictable. Some of these teams are going to add because they can, and then they hopefully will take off. The Toronto Maple Leafs might sneak in. And remember the Leafs in the '80s, and that I was a huge Leaf fan growing up. So you know, the Leaf fans of the '80s, or the teams in the '80s, they might finish 15 games that are 500, and then play the St. Louis Blues in the first round, win a round. They might even get the. It was
Mm.
unbelievable back then. These things would just happen,
Yeah.
And maybe that happens this year too, but you are what you are sometimes. And I'm trending that way. And again, I don't want to just sit here and be that Debbie Downer guy every day, but last night told me a lot. Connor Bedard was out of the lineup.
Yeah.
The Toronto Maple Leafs just didn't have the energy that I expected them to
Yeah.
have.
Listen,
That's it.
I just don't think. What day is the NHL trade deadline? Because they keep moving it back. I think it's March, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's early March now because it used to be February, but now it's March. Even though that's such a long way away, it is so hard for me to picture a scenario where they play so well that you told me, hey, they're making a move that involves Ben Danford. And I say, yeah, they kind of got to do that.
Yeah, that shouldn't. I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
Even if they do play well, they can't because, like I said, they're trending towards being something that they're going to have to build infrastructure around instead of trading out anything that they do own. So I see it going the other way, and that is we are what we are right now. We have to reset here and start hitting some home runs in the draft and spending our money wisely. So, and by the way, Dakota Joshua, great effort going to the net last night.
Yep.
Spencer Knight, that's a situation where Levshunov, if he turns to get that puck instead, he wasn't in the lineup.
Yep.
That was a set situation where it looks like it's a rebound. It wasn't. It was a chip to a right shot defenseman, and he just got beat by Joshua going to the net. It's a bad play all the way around. It looks bad, but good on Joshua for obviously cashing in on the opportunity.
No, a bright spot. Okay, so I want to talk to you about the juniors too because I'm off next week. I'm not going to get a lot of time to preview this and cover this. In years past, I've complained to you many times about how it feels like at the junior level, there's a disconnect from the upper echelon where there's a standard of this is the way Canada plays. And it's been a flattening in terms of, okay, well, we're just skill versus skill. And the Canadian identity has sort of dissipated. When you look at this roster and the goals of this World Juniors, do you feel as though this is going to be a team that invokes more of that quote-unquote Canada style of play?
Well, I have to say, absolutely. When Alan Miller got in front of everybody in the media a week ago Monday and went through their process of how they selected the team, this roster, and he ticked off those top three boxes that ring. It's like music to my ears because you and I even have discussed it on this show. He wanted them to play fast, think fast, and be relentless competitors, and then obviously have all the skill that they could assemble. But they, as a coaching and management group, made the decision that they needed to have those types of athletes in camp, and I thought that was music to my ears. Now, having said that, this is the best roster for Team Canada, the way that they brought it to this training camp that I've seen in several years. So going back to Halifax, I mean, that's not just, I guess it's not that long ago, but the Halifax tournament feels like it was an eternity ago when Connor Bedard was there. And they got a real nice mix here, JD. They got some guys up front that obviously with Misa now being loaned to the team, this power play should be an absolute wagon. But they've got guys on the back end. They got a real good mix of size and structure and skill. And the goaltending is a year older than it was last year when they were already there. And the goaltending is elite.
Yeah, the goaltending is clearly one of their biggest advantages, right? Like them being able to return two guys who are both having good years. That feels like a real feather in their cap. So, as we've discussed privately and publicly, that I'm a Yukoner who backs Gavin McKenna all the way and who needs him to be a star. And I've been annoyed by the talk around him since he joined Penn State, which is, hey, he made a mistake leaving the Dub, and that this is actually a big boy league, and he's not really producing the same amount of points. And I admit it. I'm not watching these games. I know that you're seeing more of them. And yet I really loved his answer. He was asked about it, and he mentioned, I see it. What is he? Is he Gen Alpha? I don't know what he is, but they're in a group where my guess is they see a lot of the discourse online. So he is fully aware of it, and he's talking about embracing it. How big is this tournament in your eyes for this guy? Because we've done a lot of chats about how the juniors are overrated. It's kind of like March Madness for college basketball, where it's the first time a lot of people get a real look at these people. So they get outsized impressions of what they do in a small tournament in a tiny sample size. But this one actually kind of does feel a little different for me. For a guy that has been struggling in the NCAA, for him to go to the World Junior Tournament as the guy, is it more important to you than it would be with other guys in years past?
Yeah, it is actually. And I'll give you another reason why. Team Canada, or the Canadian Hockey Canada, they made a decision after last year's tournament to reset how they organize everything and build around their program of excellence. I think it's still called that. So from the U17 level all the way through U18s, and obviously the World Junior team all the way up to the Olympic team. And the investment they made in that after 2 fifth-place finishes in a row comes with even more noise and pressure, if you will, which is a good thing for me. So you've got what you're describing, which is that McKenna hopefully will have a fantastic tournament and put himself, out there for everybody to see. This is the reason why I should be the consensus number one going forward after, the tournament, if you will. He's got that, but he's also got the opportunity to carry something on, similar to what Bedard did in Halifax a few years ago. Now, Misa's coming in, and there's, Martone's having a heck of a year. Michigan State, there's lots of structure, a lot of support around McKenna, but, he's definitely going to, all eyes will be on him. And it's going to start tonight. Like, it's going to start right away. They already are. Keaton Verhoff is a heck of a prospect. He's my number one for a lot of reasons, and people have read about it up to this point in time at North Dakota. 6'4", 215-pound right shot defenseman, but Ivor Stenberg is going to be suiting up for Sweden on the other end. It's going to be fascinating, even in the exhibition games. That they're going to want to set the tone for their tournament going forward right now. Like, they want to set that tone, and McKenna said all the right things, and it's going to be curious to see how he adjusts here to this. It's not been a straight line at Penn State, but listen, he deserves credit as well, because I've been hard on him, not because I don't trust in his skill. I've been hard on him because his 3-zone effort and his off-the-puck detail and all the little things that you just have to be average at so that the rest of your skill set can thrive when you get to pro hockey wasn't good enough. It was not even close to good enough, and it wasn't like just a one weekend thing, JD. It was an extended period of time. Now, having said that, they've turned the corner Penn State that way, and he's been way better at that. With his overall detail. So that's going to complement his skill. So there's going to be movement here at the top. We'll see what happens. But it means a lot. High leverage scenarios that you get to watch athletes at that are going to be future stars. Anytime you can get them, whether you own them as a prospect or they're draft eligible, anytime you can see how they react in this type of window, it tells you a lot about the player.
So here's the casual non-hockey scout interpretation of this, or just the way that I'm going to be looking at it. Canada's stacked, and they've got a lot of pressure, and he's a returning player. And there's also a narrative about, hey, maybe he's not quite the guy we thought he was. I need to see Gavin McKenna look materially different than a lot of his peers who are also high-level prospects. Like in this with guys like Michael Misa, I need to feel like the most dangerous guy on the ice is Gavin McKenna, and that it isn't just, okay, he's a part of a really good collective. I know that's like an unfair way of looking at things, but if you're supposed to be one of the like crown jewels of Canada moving forward and a guy that's a consensus number one, or I know he's not a consensus number one anymore, but at least gets people going, yeah, we're going to pass on the 6'4" stud defenseman who shoots from the right side and it looks like everything that Canada hockey has always celebrated. I need you to look, again, materially different. Like, you have to pop on the ice in a way that all the other guys don't.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You have to be, again, the way that I look at it from just my perspective, and it's unfortunate because I'm programmed differently. I've done this for a career for, over half my life. So you end up being programmed a little bit differently. You watch the games differently. I trust that he's going to be able to pop. I need the rest of it just to be average. And when that is average, I think he's going to earn all this extra space with the puck on his stick, and he's going to earn extra zone exits to create off the rush, a bunch of different things, because you're going to be engaged in all areas of the game, which creates opportunity to do other things. I think he's going to be good that way. Now, listen, remember last year, when Team USA was in Ottawa, you had like the Hagens line, with Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault, and you're looking at Hagens, who was a preseason consensus top prospect, and he ended up falling to the Boston Bruins right in their lap, like in the 8th hole. Now, he's not exactly McKenna. He's not. Like, Hagens was just a tier below that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that he was really good. He was solid to the way you're describing. Like, he is. Boston College line, played for Team USA. Yes, I get it. But on the power play and his execution and blah, 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 I could go through the whole thing.
He didn't overwhelm
you. He stood out as you knew it. And that's what you're saying for McKenna. You want that too. And I do too. I want Listen, I want this guy to go off. I'm a homer. I'm not going to sit here and lie about it. I am. I want all these guys to have great tournaments, but I want McKenna and Veroff and these guys to have a great couple of weeks here.
What do you want to see from Ben Danford?
I want to see Ben Danford eat pucks in key situations on the penalty kill, especially match up against top opponents. Call it the Hagens line, call it Stenbergs, these types of players, and kill plays off the rush. Body up. Kill him on the blue line with I don't mean that kill by it's just a scout speak, so nobody get upset with me here. Gap up on the blue line to eliminate zone entries and be physical, block shots, and just keep it simple with the puck. Don't stray outside your comfort zone, because that's what he is. He's a 5, maybe a 4 in the NHL. I'm leaning 5 still, but it's really good steady 5. Maybe he's a 4. We'll see, but he's just going to be a shutdown guy.
Books, great as always, buddy. Thanks so much for making time.
Awesome, buddy. Hang in there. We'll keep talking.
Yeah, we will. Jason Bukala, former NHL Director of Amateur Scouting, and, of course, hockey columnist, prospect guy for Sportsnet. Subscribe to this podcast. Whoa, cameras. We're all over the place there. We're going to come back and talk about some reporting around the Red Sox that has me hopeful but also nervous. Barrios finally breaks his silence, and the NBA Cup smash hit. That's next. A few things I want to get through here before I talk goaltending with Kevin Woodley. Always love getting catch up with Kev. One, friend of the show, Jared Carabas, went baseball viral yesterday, reporting that the Arizona Diamondbacks are to be looked at in the Alex Bregman market. That they are aggressively pursuing that player, and he is a real threat to leave Boston and go to Arizona. We'll see how this thing plays out. But it does push out some interesting fallout scenarios here. Boston Red Sox were a team that were expected to be spenders this offseason. They were expected to be aggressive this offseason. They went out and got Sonny Gray, who is fine. Good depth starter, somebody that'll probably perform well for them in the regular season, but that's not the splash that they were talking about. It's a team that moved off of Rafael Devers' money and was expected to be real players in an effort to improve a team that made it to the wild card and was very frisky, but was looking to take a step. I was told that they always wanted Bregman, that they were wanting to get Kyle Schwarber, that they were wanting to get Pete Alonso, and they missed out on 2 of those bats, and now Bregman is the only one remaining. And that scares me a little bit because I want Alex Bregman to return to the Red Sox in some way or another. And the reason for that being, I don't think that they're getting Bregman and Bo Bichette. I would imagine that if they miss out on Bregman, they're going to have to make some form of a pivot, and maybe that's a trade. They've got a lot of good prospect starters that they could move off of. Maybe they get into the Kettle Marte sweepstakes. Maybe there's another move out there that we don't even know about that they end up doing with a trade. Like, there's other avenues for the Red Sox to improve. But as I see it today, you've got Boston, the Yankees, and the Toronto Blue Jays all kind of competing in a pool for what doesn't appear to be enough guys for everybody. Maybe it turns out that way. Maybe it goes Bregman back, Bellinger back, and the Jays land one of Tucker or Bo Bichette. But I still look around baseball and say, with the Dodgers being around it, with the Mets having as bad a PR as they have, and still the need to add somebody, and them being linked to Cody Bellinger and them loosely being linked to Kyle Tucker, you start to get optimistic but also a little nervous. The optimistic view is very clear and obvious. The Jays land one of their 2 targets, and the Red Sox or the Yankees end up potentially missing the bag on one of these dudes and have to downshift into what is now, a far greater drop than it was before a lot of the second-tier guys in the market ended up signing. I'm not particularly excited by the idea of adding Alex Bregman. I'll be honest. Like, I've had a few people float to me the idea of, well, what if you got him instead of Bo Bichette? And I go, nah, I don't want the player that's older. I don't want the player that is seeing diminishing home runs year over year, who had his best years during the cheater seasons, who I think is a good baseball player. And I think that he has, it's always tough to, I feel he's clutch, but there's also my memories are tainted a little bit because you never know with some of those Astros teams. But overall, I've been pretty clear. Kyle Tucker or Bo Bichette, one of the two, and this offseason is a huge success. Miss out on both of those guys, not going to be thrilled. Not going to look at this offseason as some great success, which as of this moment it is. Like if you want to do it by, I think it's Baseball Reference War. No, maybe it's Fangraphs War. I don't know. One of the wars that we use, I'm guessing Fangraphs because most baseball people tend to lean with that. But the Blue Jays have added more Fangraphs War through free agency this offseason than any other team. And they already made it to a World Series. So again, striking success as of this moment. I just don't see a reality where they lose one of those middle of the lineup bats and we come away from this thing feeling better about the baseball team and have to have the conversations around, well, hopefully Springer can maintain and hopefully Santander bounces back and hopefully a lot of the fringy players on the roster, not fringe, but you get what I mean. The depth of the roster continues to be an unbelievable strength for this team, despite there being more longevity question marks there. So, yeah, I think that what I'm saying here is if Bregman signs with the Diamondbacks, to me, that actually puts more pressure on the Blue Jays to land their guy because you can deal an even more significant blow to an American League East rival by obtaining or keeping one of the other prized free agents. It doesn't ramp the pressure down if the Red Sox take a step back. It doesn't ramp the pressure down for me if the Yankees take a step back. It only amplifies it because you want to be able to create a gap between you and the rest of that division because of where you are in your competitive cycle and what you just did coming off of the World Series. Next, Jose Barrios. He spoke to MLB Network. I actually have the exact quote here, so I'll pull this up. Quote, I battled all season with elbow and bicep. The team being so competitive, I was trying to go out there and compete, but in the end of the season, I just put my hand up and the MRI showed tender inflammation, so we attacked that real quick, and that's why I didn't pitch in the playoffs, end quote. So I believe that. I believe that Jose Barrios had the elbow and bicep inflammation. There's no reason for him to lie about that whatsoever. I think that he was hurt. I think that that diminished the way that he pitched at the end of the year and that this is something correctable, and that he can come back from it, and that he should absolutely be viewed, if he is on this roster, as an unbelievable starting pitching depth option. The fact that you're not leaning on Jose Barrios to be one of your best three guys is incredible. And even if Shane Bieber starts the year not 100%, and they got to dial back on him, and you got to have Barrios in the four hole, I think you feel great about that, given his track record. He was one of those guys, if you remember, when all the spider tack stuff was happening, and we saw all the ups and downs and the spikes in terms of which players were clearly benefiting the most from it. Barrios remained level. He's still young-ish by Major League starting pitcher standards. There's reason for optimism. There are. What I will say is there is a little, I watched the interview. I watched parts of the interview, and yeah, I want him to address everything with his own teammates, and there has to be like the accountability to media and going on MLB Network when he's trying to promote his charity. And I don't need that in that moment. I don't need Jose Barrios to step out there and go like, I made a huge mistake and I got to talk to my teammates and I've already reached out to a bunch. Like that's not the time and the place. I don't care for that. What he's doing with them behind the scenes is going to matter a hell of a lot more. And it's very likely that most of us won't even be privy to those conversations. What I will say is that it did seem a little tone deaf. It did. Just my interpretation of it. Didn't love that it was like, and that's why I wasn't on the roster. You go, all right, you didn't really pitch overwhelmingly great for a lot of seasons, but okay, I guess this thing was lingering with you for the entire year. All right, whatever you got to do. But yeah, I thought it could have been a little better, but at least now we have some clarity on what he was dealing with from his perspective. And if it's something that they feel like they've got under control, which it does, because he says that he's already been training for the last, I think he said 5 weeks during the interview. He mentioned that he's ramping up and he wants to pitch at the World Baseball Classic, which I could see some people looking at that and going, well, should he be doing that if he wasn't healthy last year? I'm like, meh. If he's healthy enough to do it, if they like the Blue Jays training staff is going to be able to give him a heads up. And until I hear a report that says they said that they advised against it and he went, then I can't really take issue with it. The thing is I don't really feel as though you can evaluate him at the World Baseball Classic because he did that in the past. It was coming off his worst season as a Blue Jay. He stepped out there in his first game. He gave up a horrific home run, and everybody wrote him off, and then he went out to go have an incredible year with the Blue Jays. So I guess there's really not much to this. There wasn't I didn't feel satisfied in any way, but at least we do know that that's what it was. Bicep and elbow inflammation that he dealt with throughout the course of the season. So make of that what you will. Last thing, NBA Cup. I'll probably expand on this more at the end of the show. So clearly a success. Clearly the biggest year of the NBA Cup where the games seem to matter the most. And I don't know what the ratings are. I don't even really care what the ratings were. The conversations around the NBA Cup felt more relevant. I do think a lot of this actually has to do with how bad the NBA products have been this year. So when we've actually got some healthy teams or some teams that are really competing with one another and Wemby showing a little hate, sort of shows you what the drop-off has been with regular season games and how important it is to just have something refreshing. So that's a conversation for a different day. But overall, it's been a success. It's worked out. It's been fine. I don't really care for the courts. I thought that the Knicks celebration was, frankly, a little over the top for an NBA Cup. But whatever. These guys are having fun. It's a long season. They enjoyed it. That's supposed to be the goal of this thing. You're trying to build it. You're trying to make fans be invested. Who cares? Whatever. Josh Hart becomes the most famous guy from the win. And it's for stuff that happens after the game. But either way, I came away thinking two things. One, and I didn't get to watch the whole game. I tuned in because it was after Leafs talk. I saw the end of the third quarter and then the fourth. And I basically listened to Stan Van Gundy talk about offensive rebounds for 10 minutes. I went, there's so many offensive rebounds. There's so many offensive rebounds. And yeah, the Knicks generated a lot of their points off second chance points. Two little quick thoughts that maybe dissipate, but I feel pretty concrete about today. One is that the Knicks got to be the favorites in the Eastern Conference as of today because the Cavs don't look like they're it. The Raptors have hit a lull. Miami, I'm not trusting to go deep. Boston, are they really going to bring back Jason Tatum? And is there even really enough there that even if he should come back, it's going to materially change things? The Pistons, I like, but they certainly don't look like a championship caliber team. The Knicks are kind of all in, and they got a real contribution for their bench in that game. Jordan Clarkson was really good. Mitch Robinson was really good. That Kolek kid has actually, I'm so glad he's worked out because I loved him in college. And some of that stuff, whenever you see it at the college level, you go, yeah, but is he too small? Is he going to be athletic enough? And he looks like a real guy. So I like the Knicks. I think that the Knicks should be viewed as the favorites to come out of the Eastern Conference and that this is a nice little step for them where they played some meaningful games and they looked good in crunch time moments. They never really it was one of those games where San Antonio kept kind of pushing back, kind of getting back into the game, making it a real threat where they just needed a stop and a three, and all of a sudden there was going to be immense pressure on the Knicks, and New York never really let it get there. OG, phenomenal. Brunson does his thing. Yeah, I just the Knicks they're quality. I don't know if they're going to win a championship, but in terms of teams I'm most confident about coming out of the Eastern Conference, at this point, it's certainly the New York Knicks. But I actually had bigger feelings about the San Antonio Spurs because Dylan Harper is awesome. He is a joy to watch, and so is Stephon Castle. And Wemby's working his way back from this injury, and I thought that late in that game he was settling too much for shots, and it's still a huge issue for me is I want to see Wemby go inside. I want to see Wemby be someone that can dominate the interior and doesn't just settle for three-point shots, shooting over top of people. I don't need him to be jumbo Kevin Durant. I need him to be Wemby. I want to feel like there's a different layer of force to his game. And it wasn't really there last night. I was kind of hoping we were going to get more of a Wemby moment and more of a coronation of him because the game against the Thunder was so cool and he did play great. And he started talking trash. He talked trash about the Thunder. Then he goes and talks trash about the Nuggets. And then he goes and talks trash about the Knicks. So it was great. The Wemby run of talking and hating and establishing himself was amazing and awesome for him. And I hope that he continues to do it and that he doesn't take a step back and that there's a real personality there as well as an NBA superstar on the court. But I really did come away watching that game with the feeling of, man, I'm not moving off of Castle and I'm not moving off of Dylan Harper, even if it means Giannis, which is crazy, which is blasphemous, which is something that I would have never agreed with. And I watched my team win an NBA championship because they got aggressive and they traded for Kawhi Leonard. Granted, they didn't give up a piece that was quite like those two guys. But where the Spurs are at, to me, is they're not a team that's going to challenge for an NBA championship this year. They're going to be a tough out, and Wemby will probably have a moment or two, and Castle and Dylan Harper could do some stuff in the playoffs and make some noise. They feel like they could do a little bit of what Oklahoma City did, which is be patient, eat your lumps, have your growing pains, and in a couple of seasons, looking at those three guys as the core of what could be the NBA's next, I would say, mini dynasty, because these things are going to be harder and harder and harder to achieve, which is winning year over year. But yeah, if you were talking about what young core you would want the most in the NBA, if you were saying three guys, there's a conversation only with two teams. And I don't know who I'd choose. If you would pick Shea, still unbelievably young, one of the best guards flat out, potentially in NBA history, the way that he's tracking. Jalen Williams and Chet, or would you rather have Wemby, Stephon Castle, and Dylan Harper? I think that based on the Thunder winning a championship last year and the things that those guys showed, even with Wemby as a top-tier asset of potential, that it wouldn't even be a conversation for me. It would be the Thunder. You would take the Thunder's three guys, no doubt about it. Yesterday was the first time where I looked at those three and went, this might be a conversation. So I'm excited about the Spurs' future. I really like the Spurs. I like the Spurs a lot more than I thought I was going to, based on just, I've never been a fan usually of the big, freaky, dominant guy. So go Spurs. Quick break. Talk to Kevin Woodley about the Leafs goaltending. So when I was a kid, I watched the JFK movie. The Oliver Stone JFK movie. And boy, did it get me at the right time. I was probably like, I don't know, 13, 14 years old. Pretty sure I watched it on VHS. And I think it was like a 2-part VHS. Maybe I was even younger, probably younger. And I remember the end of the JFK movie. If you remember it, it was, you get all these conspiracy theories thrown at you, right? The movie ends. You feel like, wow, this is what's going on. Again, it hit me at the perfect time where I went, this is crazy. I remember rushing and talking to my dad about it and him giving me his theory. It was a fun little moment. And the end of the movie, it has this part where they show you, hey, the JFK files will open up, and happened recently. I think it was like 2023, 2022. And 10 to 13-year-old me sat there and looked at that screen and went, I cannot wait. The truth will be revealed. And then that day did come, and it was very underwhelming, and you didn't really get anything extra and whatever. But that's now how I feel about Austin Matthews, where he's not going to say and nobody's going to know. And I've tried my damnedest to find out what exactly it is. And again, the Leafs, they have put it out there that his back, and that his back last year was in no great shakes, and he was dealing with it all season long. But I'm telling you, they pushed very hard to tell everyone that this offseason he was fine, and this year that he was going to be back to the same Matthews. And I keep seeing the same thing in my mentions when he's not performing great, which is, it's his back. Can't you see it's his back? And I've heard some other stuff about the wrist. So maybe that's part of this and why the shot hasn't been the same and why it's 5 miles per hour fewer and that he's way more likely to defer when he has those classic Austin Matthews looks, whatever. But it's like JFK end of movie level now where I go, I can't wait for him at the end of his career, hopefully, to just divulge he writes a book and he just lets everybody know exactly what was going on because I'm so tired of everybody guessing. I'm so tired of everybody arguing, even though nobody actually has the facts. Even though, again, I've gotten closer to it, I think, than most people will. And still, I don't have enough certainty to ever say, nope, this is what it is outside of what I've been told, which I'm not even sure I believe. Anyway, Kevin Woodley, the goalie guru, NHL.com and NHL Magazine. He joins me now. What's up, buddy? How we doing? Long time no chat.
I was impassioned.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, when did you watch that JFK movie? You didn't have the same thing when the movie, they rolled the credits and they went, hey, 2022, look out. We'll get the truth.
Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm so old I don't remember when I watched it.
You remember that?
No, I just don't remember it.
Yeah, I guess maybe it had a different impact on different people. Okay, so I love getting to pick your brain about goaltenders. We do this every year. We talk about the Leafs goalies, and you're a huge Wool guy. We talk about a lot of the numbers that are surrounding these guys. And I want to start with this, which is the last season when we were having a chat, you talked about how, the Leafs are giving up a lot of shots, but it's a more, I think the terminology you use is goalie-friendly environment than it has been in some years past. That it's more conducive to having success for these guys, even though the shot totals are higher. This season, when you're looking at all of this data and when you've had a chance to parse through it, is it telling you the same story, that these goaltenders are facing something where, yes, the shot totals are high, but it's still a conducive environment for goaltender success?
It's gotten better of late, with some notable exceptions from some games. I would point to Anthony Stolarz as the prime example of how much looser it was early. His expected save percentage this year was .884 before he got hurt. It was .898 last year. It's a 14-point swing in environment. So in order to compare Anthony's numbers this year to Anthony's numbers last year, you have to knock 14 points. You have to add 14 points to his save percentage. So I think that tells you that's rudimentary level explanation for what's going on in terms of his environment. Like I said, it's better of late when I look, and that's going to be reflected in a Dennis Hildeby at .893, which is 5 points above the league average. Joseph Woll at .907, which is one of the better environments in the entire league right now. So it's not universal. It's shifted, and I think that's the start to it. How poor it was early on probably surprised some people, just because you would think a little bit, and I've seen this before. Saw it here in Vancouver. Rick Tocchet, year 1 to year 2. You see those defensive habits, you see those structural things in place, and you assume they're baked into the DNA. Okay, this is how they play now. But those are things that are hard, it's hard work. It's not easy to play that way. And this year especially, this year is just the nature of everything, the schedule, the demands on everyone, the lack of practice time to drill down on details and some of those structural issues. It's just been harder around the league. But I remember thinking the same thing, Tocchet, year 1 to year 2. They were so good defensively in year 1. Where did that go in year 2? And sometimes it can be a team thinking, okay, we did it last year, it'll just come, but it doesn't come without the hard work. And like I said, this year it's been hard for a lot of teams to sort of dial in on details. And I think especially early on in the year, that was reflected in the environment. And I think you see it in the differences between those three goaltenders in terms of what they've had to face.
Yeah. Okay. So if I'm just going to, I think there's a lot of good points there. One being, I do wonder if we give the schedule enough credit when we talk about all these teams, just the condensed nature of it, the removed practices, the product that we're seeing across the league in terms of the flattening of the points, especially in the Eastern Conference where you don't know who's going to be in what position every single night. But with the goalies, essentially what I'm taking from what you just said there is we can throw out basically everything we saw with Stolarz in that tiny sample in terms of, hey, are you concerned? His injury is a different story. But in terms of his play, that the environment was so bad that anybody trying to really judge or pin down on what he had done was kind of a nothing. That Woll maybe is getting, he's played well, but that he is also benefiting from the best version of the Maple Leafs, and that Hildeby has actually been somewhere in the middle.
It's actually like it's probably an oversimplification on my part, but certainly that's the way it looks
Okay.
from here. Now, that said, like, listen, like your environment is your environment. You can outplay a bad environment, right? Like, and Anthony Stolar's hasn't this season so far. And 884 as an expected save percentage is, like I said, that's 4 points below league average. It's a significant step back. Like I said, 14 points below what he had last year. But I look around the league and there are some guys that are stopping bullets in their teeth behind worse environment. What Ilya Sorokin is doing for the New York Islanders right
Mhm.
now should have him at the top of every Vezina list and frankly in a lot of Hart discussions. The last time I checked, his expected save percentage was like 875,
Wow.
and he was performing at a league best level relative to that. So it's tough to do, I think, cumulatively over a long time to outperform a bad environment. But there are some guys that do it, and Stolar's was below expected in terms of his performance relative to that environment. I think there were times that when I watched his game and watched footage, what I saw was a goalie, and this can come with the uncertainty of things in front of you not being as predictable, looks being more open. I saw a guy who was getting a little lower, a little wider in his stance, and as soon as you widen out, as soon as you dig in, as soon as you get locked up that way, you lose mobility. And so if you make a read on an open look and you get all into your tense, wide, low, and he plays effectively from a low, wide stance more than most guys, but you get too committed to that, like the difference between, like you add another 6 inches to that stance and your inability to move out of it, if that guy with the open look also has pass options, like it can just sort of start to compound itself. And that's what I saw when I watched the video of Stolar's. Is just, got the protractors out on the screen, and it just like looked like he was just a little lower, a little wider than he was last year, and it would be a subtle difference, but because he succeeds playing that way a lot of the time. But that's what I noticed early in the season, and that's something that can go to environment and being able to sort of trust what's going on in front of you. We do the pro reads at In Goal where we sit down and watch video with guys, and they explain to us their reads. This is why I chose this depth. This is why I chose this save selection. This is why I played it this way. Here's what I'm seeing, and I think a lot of us, even me going into it, we're like 350 deep with these. I always thought it would be about the forwards, and certainly a
Mhm.
lot of it is. What hand is he? What's he showing? Are his hips open? Is this a shooter? What's his tendencies? But like 80% of it is, where are my guys? What are my
Mm.
guys taking away? And being able to trust that is such a massive part of your reads. As soon as you don't trust your reads and you start to sort of alter your mechanics or alter your stance and your setup, like that's everything for a goaltender. And that can be a pretty slippery slope once it starts to change on you.
So speaking of your game reads, Wool was one of the guys that you were most impressed with when you sat down with him. I remember one of our conversations, I think it was a year ago, where you had pointed out that, yeah, mentally he reminded you of Carey Price, which was high praise. But yeah, you sit down with a lot of these guys, and yeah, I think that I really trust your opinion on this kind of stuff. When you look, like when I've watched Wool this season, and he came back kind of at the perfect time where the team just desperately needed him, right? They couldn't buy a save. They were kind of falling apart defensively. He comes back and it coincides with Toronto playing better. And he has been terrific. Like, you really can't notch too much about his game. I actually think that it looks like a guy that's taken a step. And I'm curious if that is your feeling as well, or the read in which the numbers are telling you.
Like when I said his environment was really friendly, he's still outplaying it by a significant margin.
Yeah.
Like 15th in the entire net. Well, I filtered for the small sample guys, got rid of the guys who had seen less than 100 shots so far this season. But
Mhm.
amongst that group, and it's not a small group. There's 70 goalies have seen 100 chances at this point. Joseph Wool ranks 15th in adjusted save percentage. Like that's, even in, yes, the environment is easier, but he's outperforming it by a significant margin. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't dig deep into his video compared to the other two,
Mhm.
just because obviously Anthony set such a high standard last year, and obviously it hadn't happened for him this year. So I figured that would be part of the conversation, and
Mhm.
Hildeby an unknown to me as well. But when I've watched Wall over the past year or so, at times I've seen a guy who looks like he's playing the game a little bit in his body rather than through his eyes and reacting. And I saw that a little bit last year, like sort of trying to, for lack of a better phrase, stance his way through the game, like just perfect setup all the time. and maybe focused on that as opposed to, and that's good. Like in terms of staying healthy, like not coming outside your structure, those are all positives. But maybe it looked, and this is just easy to say from my couch, but what it looked like, it doesn't necessarily mean how he was feeling, but it looked like there was a little bit of sort of almost too mechanical at times. And
Mm.
now I think you see a guy who has that foundation in how he holds his frame and how he holds his stance and his mechanics looks a little more innate, and he's just playing out of it. Like he's reacting, um, and the way he thinks the game, the way he reads the game, early eyes, and being able to access all that information, that processor that I talked about when I made that comparison to Price, the way he processes the game. It just looks like it looks like there's a better balance. I know he made some changes in terms of how he trains, and how you train sometimes can go beyond just, what weights you're lifting, or in the case of goalies, often not weights at all, but the types of exercises you're doing and actually how you play, how you want to hold yourself on the ice, that sort of stance and biomechanics stuff. And I just think he looks more comfortable with that this year, and he's back to sort of playing the game within it rather than focused on it. And again, that's from 10,000 feet watching from a distance, but just something I noticed. And he's outperformed the environment. He's given them top 15 goaltending despite having some absences and coming back from them, which can be like trying to catch a moving train for goalies
Mhm.
once the season gets going after you've had all that time off. And I think you got to tip your cap to the job he's done this year.
No, you absolutely do, and especially like you said, the moving train analogy. There was certainly on my end a fear that the time that he missed and not having a training camp and the way that the Leafs were playing, that he would have to jump in and it wasn't going to look very good and look great. And maybe they overused him. He played 8 of 9 and ends up having an injury and has to step away. I don't know if he is. I don't know how many guys are built for the workload now, but he doesn't seem to be a guy that can just take a old school like Ed Belfour 90s workload and just play 60 plus games and you go, yeah, that's fine. You can put him down in pen for that. So probably one of the bigger developments this season outside of his play, which was terrific, and you do tip the cap to him jumping in and just performing the way that he has, is Hildeby started to emerge as an actual guy. And when Wool went out, having to take the net looked more than competent, looked very good. So, trying to filter in some of the stuff that you have in terms of the environment data, what do you see when you watch a guy like Dennis Hildeby? And do you think that this is sustainable, his play at the NHL level?
Well, we'll start with the numbers.
Yeah.
And, I talked about his expected, his environment being just a little bit above league average, but right in between those two, like Wool at the one extreme and Stolar's, maybe not the extreme, but a lot lower. His adjusted save percentage, so in other words, how he's performed relative to environment, he's at plus 2%, which means he's saving them 2 goals on every 100 shots relative to league average. That's 8th in the National Hockey League.
Hmm.
That is statistically this season so far 0.1%, like one spot on the sort of top 10 rankings ahead of some guy named Hellebuck, right? Like, and there are a few names on this list, like right with him, tied with the same numbers as Devin Cooley, the Calgary Flames. Jesper Wallstedt of the Minnesota Wild is up there. Brandon Busey is in second place. So there are some names that we don't necessarily expect, like Hellebuck's always there. But there are some other names around there that you might not expect to see there. And I think that speaks to sample. And we've talked about the volatility in goaltending, and certainly this could swing. But when I watch the footage, like I just see a really balanced guy who probably, like, there'll be ups and downs, don't get me wrong. There always are. This is a massive learning curve for goalies stepping into the toughest league in the world, and a league that, whether it's through schedule, offense, I think with the schedule you lose some of those defensive details. I've talked to guys around the league about some of the sloppiness that's come into their games defensively, and it's just there's no practice time. There's no time to dial in on those things, and everybody being on the same page so that the goalie can read off of it behind them. Like, there's just not as much of that right now. So there will be volatility. But when I watch his film, like, I see a guy who has a really balanced game, who, strong technical foundation, obviously a massive body, puts himself in position where he puts himself in position to get hit a lot. And Don't confuse that with, like, I'm not saying, oh, he's a blocking goalie. I don't know that there are any of those in the league. Like, the ability to move your massive frame into the right space at the right time, effectively, efficiently, square, without sort of giving up your platform, your foundation, being able to keep your hips high, your shoulders up, not getting spread out and opened up. Like, that's athleticism. It requires a significant amount of skill to do so. And for the most part, he does it at a really high level. I think you'll see him with time actually improve, because one of the parts is just sort of the reads,
Hmm.
right? Like those pro reads that we talked about, being able to connect the patterns of the game. I always go back to Mitch Korn's, goalie guru, now the goaltending director with the Nashville Predators, on a list of 4 or 5 guys that should be in the Hall of Fame. That's a whole nother rant for me. But he talks about goaltending isn't a game of shots. It's a game of patterns, and your ability to sort of connect those patterns is what matters. And so the more experience you have behind that environment, the better you are able to sort of connect those patterns. And when I look at his game there were some moments in the Carolina game where he gave up a bunch where, I thought he had a really good neutral positioning. And in today's game, that's a trend we see. Like, you can't be overly aggressive, because the way players move the puck east west, you're just giving yourself way too much space to cover off. And so I liked his positioning, but he got sniped a few times off open looks, off rush, off them bleeding grade A's, and Carolina's skill going to town by putting pucks bar down and just, inside the post on them. And by the end of that game, there was a chance. I'm trying to remember exactly who it was, but by the end, one of those rushes, as that shooter loads up, he started to sort of drift forward and flex out, and they went around him. And that's to me, that's part of the reads, right? And sort of knowing when to do which one, when to take a little ice, when to give it back. We've seen him get caught in an overlap a little bit, where instead of going into his post and playing inside his post in what people would know as a RVH, or reverse VH,
Hmm.
he's overlapping with that low skate outside the post. And there have been times where that puck moves laterally, and that extra, it seems so small, rather than setting up inside your post, setting up just outside of it. And there's some benefits to it physically in terms of wear and tear and also net coverage. But that foot and a half that you step outside the post is another foot and a half you have to cover the other way. And we've seen him not be able to cover that off a couple times. Again, like, this guy's performing at a top 10 level in the National Hockey League. And there are moments within these games, from a read perspective, from an understanding his game and understanding, that the Hyman goal off, and that's McDavid coming down the wing. So maybe you feel like you do need to be in an overlap there. You can't be inside your post because McDavid will put it over your shoulder under the bar. Those are all the reads that will come with more experience. A little bit on screens, which have never been tougher for goalies. So when I look at his game, like, how rarely he ends up sprawled out is impressive for a goaltender of his size facing these types of chances. Like, there's a lot to like. And as much as there may still be some ups and downs to come, I look at it and I just, like, with more reads and more experience, I'd love to sort of pick his brain and see how he thinks it. But if he thinks it anything like Joseph Woll, or processes it in that way, you're just going to see him connect those dots, those patterns of the game better and better as the year moves on and he gets more experience. Now, from a critical standpoint, I do wonder about the pace. The game's never been faster. I don't watch his practices. That makes it tougher, but just pace east west. And so if you don't have it, if you're not as fast as some other guys, I see a Thatcher Demko practice on a regular basis. His pace is off the charts. He's never behind a play, but there's a wear and tear that comes with that as well. So if your pace isn't the same, then again, you have to make decisions on positioning with a little more neutrality, a little more sort of back in your crease, so that you can make up for a lack of pace and speed by shortening your routes and your paths. But when I look at the total package, again, as much as I can in 25 minutes of video, I'm impressed by a lot of what I see out of Dennis Hildeby. And I think there's an opportunity there with time and experience to just continue to grow.
Yeah, but that's kind of the answer that you want at this point of his career, right? Like, he hasn't had enough of those. He hasn't had enough of those opportunities. But the stuff that you're seeing right now doesn't feel flukish. And for a guy his size to seem like look as athletic as he does, that to me feels like a rarity, because when you're talking about some of those, the plays that he's been able to make, man, it, he is, I would say, rare when it comes to size and mobility at that position.
Well, we've seen the trend toward size for sure, and sometimes it's at the cost of mobility. And I think we're seeing a pushback on that when you see the success of Wolf. Like the game is all about
Yep.
east-west in terms of creating offense, and teams understand how to score in terms of making goalies go side to side. And so we've seen some of these smaller goalies, Jet Greaves, Dustin Wolf, start to have some success, and teams maybe understanding that 6 foot isn't necessarily like at the end of the day. I think Ian Clark put it best to me a few years ago. Another guy, by the way, who should be on that Hall of Fame list, and Curtis Sanford's mentor, both as a goalie coach when he was in the league, and then when he started as a goalie coach on the other side of it. Um, the There's a perfect size, might be 6'2", might be 6'3", but at either extreme, like when you move away from that in either direction, you have to overcome your size. And the smaller guys, some of it's just perception and square footage, but they make up for it with pace and ability to keep up in these plays and hold edges. In a case of Dustin Wolf, like just have patience to the nth degree on those edges. The bigger guys, pace is not going to be the same. They're not going to be as fast east-west, not all of them. And they're going to open up more holes when they move, right? Like there's a little bit of a tendency for Dennis Hildeby when he goes to his right versus his left to open up and sort of turn and open his shoulders rather than staying over top of pucks. Just a slight thing. Like it's not a criticism. None of this is a criticism. The guy's top 8 in the National Hockey League in adjusted save percentage, right? Like these are all positives. I'm saying there might even be more room for growth as he gets experience, because I do think you talk about the athleticism. I just see a really strong technical foundation. And with the combination of technique, tactics, and size, he gives himself a really high floor. Because even when you're not feeling it, even when you're not 100%, and this is what's changed in the game in the last 10 years, the vets, the guys hanging over my shoulder on the wall for those watching the stream, the Price, the Lundqvist, the Luongo, like they figured out how to get away with their B games in the NHL. And when I talk to goalies around the league now, like you can't, there's no such thing. The B game's when they hang 7 on you. But if you've got that combination of size, tactics, and technique to put yourself in the right position at his size, like you're going to get hit sometimes, right? Like you're on your off nights where maybe the hands don't feel great. You're just putting your frame in a spot to sort of, take away a large portion of the net. So I think that gives you a really high floor. And with experience, knowing it's rare when I look through this footage of him, I don't see him where he's taken himself out of the net. There are instances. We talked about the overlap. The more you get into that spot where you're not costing yourself, and that's the challenge for big goalies. Like we think of depth as north-south. It's also east-west within your post. Don't take too much ice east-west to the point where you can't make it up on the other side, or that you can't get across to, every foot I am outside my post on the left is 2 feet I have to make up to get to that same spot on the right. So I see that most of the time in his game. It's interesting that you mentioned that size thing. Because Devin Cooley has it, and he's as quick as anyone in there. And we're, again, small sample, but we're seeing him at the top of the National Hockey League numbers. A guy that got filtered out by that 100-game cutoff or 100-chance cutoff that I put into the filters that we've seen here in Vancouver is Nikita Tolopilo at 6'6", who also has a similar skill set and is showing, I would say, compared to Hildeby, a tendency to get more extended and sort of spread out and rely more on athleticism. But, if you have that package, there's a place for you in the NHL, is I guess what I'm saying. They will, even as a late bloomer like a Cooley or a Tolopilo, they will find that spot for you when that is your foundation.
Well, it's huge for the Leafs right now, too, because, obviously goaltending is important for everyone, but the way that they've played, say, inconsistently defensively, they are needing stops more than, a lot of teams around hockey. And given the stuff with Wool's workload and having zero clarity on how long it's going to be before Stolarz returns, which at this point they've only said it's not a concussion, but now he's seeing another specialist, that what it seems to be clear here is that Hildeby is a guy that they're going to be able to lean on to give Joseph Wool a break, that they're not going to have to play him 8 of 9 games, that he is competent enough and credible enough to be able to get the night or to get more nights than what they were looking to give him during Wool's first stretch release. I got one non-Leafs goalie question for you because, the two goalies played each other last night wearing their old team's masks. And I just put it. Are you as down on Tristan Jarry as the consensus seems to be? Like when you looked at that trade, did you view it as laterally as the rest of the league did?
No, and actually I wrote a piece at ingoalmag.com where we use ClearSight analytics. And listen, like I can't watch every goalie
Yeah.
every night. Like so that's why I lean on the numbers. Honestly, I don't think anybody that tells you they can is full of it. Even like at a pro scouting level. Like there's no way we see I talked about the discrepancy within the Leafs in terms of defensive environment for three goalies playing behind the
Yep.
same team. Like it's apples to oranges within your same team. You can't compare teams, you can't compare guys on different teams. Like it's just no way without having that sort of baseline of what type of quality they're facing. We've finally accepted that shot quality matters. Listen, I ran the numbers on Tristan Jarry to Edmonton. We call it Mythbusters. Like, hey, do we see something where the narrative doesn't match the numbers? And for Tristan Jarry, like when we talk about those sort of where guys are this year and where Dennis Hildeby was in 8th place in the National Hockey League in adjusted save percentage, right now after 2 games with Edmonton, Tristan Jarry is 10th in adjusted save percentage. And honestly, he was up above Hildeby until he got to Edmonton. They haven't exactly been tight in front of him defensively in his first 2 starts. Um, that opening game in Toronto, they had like 13 high danger. Like he saved a goal and a half better than expected in that game as well. So he's been really good this year. I understand the sample goes beyond that. I understand there are questions about playoff performances, and those are all fair.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, this season he's been good. He's been a top 10 guy in the NHL. I know some of the work he's done in the past 2 off seasons to sort of improve and tighten his game. A lot of it is some of the mechanics we talked about, the tracking mechanics, and sort of tightening up that. Are there limitations in his game in terms of post play? Yeah, a little bit. Although, again, he's worked on that the past couple of years. Is he perfect? No, there's very few perfect goalies. But honestly, like the season he's had, and then I ran the numbers. ClearSight has something called goalie swap, where you can take one goalie X and plug him into Team A. And when I plug Tristan Jarry into the Edmonton Oilers, and that is the Edmonton Oilers environment of this season, and much like the Maple Leafs, that is an environment in the past couple of years that's one of the tops in the NHL defensively and absolutely cratered at the start of this year. I think perhaps more understandably in Edmonton, given how much hockey they'd played and some of the widespread personnel changes. But that's a team that defended really well to get to 2 cup finals and didn't defend well at all at the beginning. Like left their goalies hung out to dry. The Calvin Pickard story, last year he had one of the highest expected save percentages in the NHL. It was like 904, 905, top two. I think it was top 2 in the NHL. So easiest environments. They played hard for him. They picked his spots in terms of where he started, and he rewarded them. This year it's 869. Like those are 2 different worlds. So, and Stuart Skinner wasn't quite as low as that, but he had a tough environment as well. So when I plugged Tristan Jarry into Edmonton's environment, and here's the thing, the goalie you're plugging in, it's last year and this year. And for Jarry, that scale skews heavy to last year because that's a full season versus just a third of this season. So you're plugging his numbers from a season and a third, most of which are a year in which he spent time in the American Hockey League and cleared waivers, into the Edmonton Oilers system compared to their goalies, and he would have saved them 15 goals this year. Now, 10 of them are in Pickard's environment, only 5 were in Skinner's. So him to Skinner is a 5-goal savings. But I don't see this as quite the same lateral move based on the way he's played this year. I think we know, like, I don't necessarily agree with it because I think Skinner was trending up recently. And this is the thing with Jarry. He has hot starts in the past and trails off. So that will be something that needs to change this year. I think in a perfect world, if you're Edmonton, you get both. I think in a perfect world, if you're Edmonton and you're going to get Tristan Jarry, you don't fire the goalie coach that works with him every summer last year. So a lot of what Edmonton does about goaltending leaves me scratching my head a little bit. But in terms of who Tristan Jarry is, I think the narrative got a little overblown on the negative. I understand he cleared waivers. I understand he went through the league. I understand he spent time in the American League last year. But he's been really good this season. And if he can maintain that, and that's fair enough, it's an if, he will be an upgrade on what they were getting. He's different. And I think at the end of the day, even talking to people in that organization, whether it's right or wrong, they just felt they couldn't lose again with Stuart Skinner. So different matters here. He also handles the puck, and don't discount this. We saw what Jordan Binnington meant to Team Canada at Four Nations, not just stopping pucks, but stopping pucks behind the net, making quick plays and passes, allowing defensemen to skate off of good leaves. Goalies that handle the puck can make a difference to defensive execution and getting out of your own end. And Tristan Jarry handles it as well as anyone. So I expect you'll see, with a little time and comfort with his defense, him start to do more of that in Edmonton as they get comfortable with each other.
That's a great point, and one that probably gets completely overlooked all the time unless you're somebody of like Mike Smith caliber, right? Then it just gets completely neglected from, I would say, 99% of goalies' games is the puck handling. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at KevinIsInGoal. He works for NHL.com and, of course, the excellent In Goal magazine. Thanks, as always, for doing this, man. I always love getting to do it.
Yeah, my apologies for those watching on the low camera quality. We're on the old computer camera today. I didn't have the studio set up.
It was
this
all
morning,
fine.
so
It was all good. Thanks.
It's
for doing
also
it.
7 a.m. here, JD.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm a little haggard.
Yeah, it worked out. It was great. Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Kevin Woodley. All right, let's take a quick. That Hill to be stuff is super encouraging. I like when the numbers match the eye test, and that's clearly what this guy is saying here. Quick break before we do that. Sportsnet 59 of the Fan is all in supporting the 50-50 Fortune for Sick Kids. It's a 50-50, so the more cash we raise, the more kids we can help, and the more holiday cash you can win. This is your last week to buy tickets. The final draw is Thursday morning. Current take-home prize, $520,000. Who couldn't use $520,000 while also contributing to charity? Buy your tickets at 5050fortune.ca or text the word money to 59590 and we'll send the link right to your phone. 18 plus, please play responsibly. Standard message and data rates apply. Lottery license RAF 1518410. Quick break. We'll come back, hit what we missed. All right, let's wrap this up. Armin, what did we miss?
Can I start out with a sincere thank you? I need to thank you. Thank you for never bringing up 6'7", never asking me about 6'7".
I have no interest in it.
Never joking about 6'7". Thank you, JD. Honestly,
Why?
this is from the listeners and me, because I thought you were gonna ask me about it, and I had nothing. I was just gonna poo-poo it.
Why? Why would I ask you about it? Because
It's like the generation thing we do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I was at the Leafs Oilers this Saturday, and every kid they showed on the screen.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I hate it.
I hate it too.
No, but I don't hate it because it's kids having fun. That's whatever. I just hate it because it's like we're such a monoculture now in terms of the internet. Like it just
Well, it just has no actual meaning. Like we
Yeah.
were doing, like our trends was like ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. We were like raising money. We were making funny videos.
Yeah, these are just mostly little kids, and I see adults doing it and trying to have fun. I don't know. It's just whatever makes you have fun, have fun. But I got 0, 0, 0, negative 1,000 interest in anything to do with it. Not just being a grumpy old man. Like I said, do your thing, but I don't get it. I don't
rather
need to
you
understand.
be a grumpy old man
I just
instead of like
don't-
making the fake jokes.
I just don't care. I just do not care about whatever it is and people doing it. And whenever I see it going into my social feeds, like I watched a women's basketball layup lineup where they did the drill and then they started doing it with the kids. I'm like, all right, just having fun interacting with the kids. But like, I don't know why it goes viral, or I can't believe the staying power that it has, I guess, is probably more my curiosity with it. Anyways, what did we miss?
Jake Fisher from the Stein line had some updates on the Raptors in the trade market, what they might be thinking. I'm just going to read a couple of his tidbits. Raps would prefer Giannis over AD if the price points are relatively similar. The Raptors have shown some interest in Domantas Sabonis. And they have their appetite of how aggressive they might be will be more clear towards the end of January, obviously, closer to the trade deadline. Touched on the Bobby point we made earlier this week, just in terms of every game kind of being a microscope and being an evaluation of what the team might be offering. Sabonis was really the new name that we heard in the reporting, JD. I've heard you in the past, just off air, me and you chatting. You like Sabonis for the most part. Do you like his fit with the Raptors on this Raptors team?
They need rebounding. He provides that. He's a playmaker. Here's the thing with the Raps, man. They're in such a weird position given where they're at that if you're selling me on the idea of like they already made the Ingram move, which was we're buying really low on a guy who does a thing. We're not rebuilding the traditional way, which is patience, selling off pieces, grabbing more assets, building through the draft, seeing what you have with your young players, and moving forward that way. So if they keep going the route of Ingram, which is grab depreciating assets through trades, fine. I still just don't really see where they're getting, I guess, the upgrade. Like, to me, it's if you're moving off of the RJ Barrett contract and you're bringing back as a bonus, okay, you get better rebounding. I would say you actually do get better playmaking, even though RJ has the ball in his hands more. Are you getting better scoring? Like, are you getting another guy that goes downhill? Like, does he fit well next to the other pieces on your roster? Like, is he just automatically going to slide in there, play the 4? And I know that we don't even really do positions the same way anymore, but does that balance out your team? I look at it and go, sure, I'd be willing to try it because I'm not overly invested in the ceiling of this team as it is now. But overall, like, any of these guys, and it's like, of course, I've said this already. Would I take Anthony Davis at a diminished price? Sure. I thought this report was funny mostly because there was there's one line in here where Jake Fisher says they would prefer Giannis at a discounted price as well. I went, they would. They would prefer Giannis at a discounted price? Like, yeah, of course, every team in the NBA is thinking that way. What my biggest takeaway from all of this, like the Raptors being involved in these rumors where now all of a sudden they're getting linked to everyone, right? Where you go, oh, they're on DeMontis. Oh, they're in on AD. And, oh, there's a price they would pay for Giannis, which at this point doesn't feel realistic to me. And I just don't know why the Bucks would trade Giannis for anything underwhelming trade package. Mm-hmm. And I also don't understand why Giannis would want to go to a place that was giving up a ton in order to acquire him and looks very similar to the situation that he's already in. So that's why I'm not overly optimistic that he gets moved.
And Masai's gone.
Sure.
That was our big connection.
Well, whatever. My main thing that I'm getting to here is them being linked to everything sort of shows you that no one's really sure of what the vision is. And this has been the problem all along, and that was the problem with the Ingram trade. I keep saying this over and over and over again. There are things about Brandon Ingram's game, and especially with the Pelicans, that I did not love, right? And he's improved in some of those areas. I don't think he's been as much of a ball stopper. He's been a better passer out of double teams. He has reset and relocated and moved off of the ball better than what I had seen from him in the past. It looks as though he has bought in defensively to what the Raptors are doing, and that he didn't just get the check and go, yeah, I'm good. I'm just going to do my Brandon Ingram thing. He looks like a guy who's genuinely trying to fit in. I commend him for that. I had questions about that when they made the trade. The injury stuff won't go away because he's played, 30% of the season. That's going to be a season-long thing, a contract-long thing, so that question mark can't really be shored up. But the other reason why I didn't like it, and the main reason that I did not like the trade, is that to the vision point, it didn't seem like it was a part of the way that they were doing this with the rebuild, where they were saying, we're in the rebuild, we got Scotty Barnes, we're going to be patient with this thing. They had quickly on the contract, younger player. It seemed as though they were going to move off of RJ Barrett, who's still fairly young, but seemed almost a little too old almost for their timeline. And they went and moved for Ingram, which pushed the timeline up. That's why you and I had that conversation about Darko saying that this is year 2 of a rebuild, and people go, no. You don't trade first-round picks when you're in a rebuild. That's not a thing that teams do. So that part of it's over. But if you're looking at guys who are imperfect fits or who come with big question marks, like AD and like Sabonis, it sort of tells me you don't really know what you are. You don't really know what you're supposed to be. And yeah, they're still on that journey of finding that out. And no one expected, and I certainly didn't. Maybe some people did, but I didn't expect through, what is it? How many games has it been now? It's
27.
I was going to say 30 games. So through 30 games this season, no one was going to be able to definitively say what the Raptors are. I would say that even with the disappointing stretch, that they are better than expected. They've had some lulls. But overall, when it comes to the direction and you look at the rest of the league and ultimately what you're going to be competing against. Okay, so if you don't think the Raptors are going to win a championship this year, which nobody does, right? Like, they're not beating Oklahoma City. They're not getting to a finals. But even next year, Pacers returning Halliburton, having a draft pick, having a lot of their depth return, Celtics getting Tatum back, another year of the Pistons development, and maybe the Cavaliers make a drastic move because this thing doesn't work out and they ship out like a Darius Garland or a Jared Allen and they kind of transform their team. I'm not really sure what the next year for the Raptors is supposed to be either. And so this is the issue with being linked in those trades, is it would be nice if you were actually just linked to one guy because you thought, this is actually the piece that will make them X. Mm-hmm. But the idea of Anthony Davis, we've already said it, you got to throw 2 contracts in there and probably a young wing player and probably a draft pick. So it depletes a lot of your depth to be built around a couple of very injury-prone players and not look like you have a championship ceiling with limited assets moving forward or more limited asset pile moving forward. You move in to get Sabonis, like, there's been one winning season in Sacramento since he's been there, the light the beam year. It's not like he's Mr. Conducive to winning. And like, if you just dropped him into this Raptors team in a vacuum, right? Great. Same with AD. Great. You find a way to just get these guys somehow and perfect. You can always come up with fantasy reasons as to why these guys would work out the way that they would. But like, ultimately, there is a cost to get these things done and there's a removal from the team. And I don't look at them as overly deep in the first place. Like, we're still talking about, hey, is any of their 3 wing players going to emerge as a guy? Hey, do they have enough depth in terms of their backup center position when it comes to rebounding? Hey, their asset pile, yes, they own all their own draft picks, but those are super important. And we've seen in the past where the Raptors don't have their pick and how much it impacts them. So
Ingram's averaging the most minutes per game in the NBA.
Yeah, that's a big piece of the conversation. Whenever they mention it on a broadcast, I go, whoa. That's
right?
A little spooky.
That is.
All that is to say is it doesn't feel abundantly clear to me what the direction of the team is outside of being very competitive. Like, is the goal to get a championship? That's supposed to be it. And it doesn't really feel like any of those potential moves that they would make would get them to be a championship level team. Yet also in the absence of a move, I don't think they look like a championship winning team. And so, yeah, they're in a tricky spot. This is why I didn't like it. Is I don't like being in the middle. It's a frustrating thing as a sports fan. It's more entertaining right now with the Raptors because they've been so bad the last couple of years that actually getting to turn on the TV and watch them play the Heat and be competitive and have things to talk about. Watching Barnes take that step, you go, man, that was enjoyable. That's way better than like when I took Ennis for his 40th birthday to go watch the Thunder and we watched a bunch of G League players get thumped by Shea, who came out in the third quarter. So I don't know how long it will last throughout the course of the season where they can just be kind of middle of the pack, little above middle of the pack, good, maybe a plucky out, and have it feel like they don't need to make a move. So like the idea that they feel as though that they need to make something happen right now, that they're reported and linked, tells me that they don't really feel concrete in the vision, but also that they're not definitive in terms of where it needs to go. Anyway, subscribe to this podcast, leave 5 stars. I'll see you tomorrow.